Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I'm making for Wudi as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen from an act named MyGO titled Shiori Trail Marker. So we're going to listen through this track from start to finish. We're going to hear what we think, and just before we go any further, we do have lyrics for it, so this is going to be great. Let's go.
普通とか当たり前ってなんだろう。今手にある物差しでは全然うまく測れなくって、相手はまた吸い込んだ不安に僕はなすがまま立ち尽くして、不器用で絡まって傷つくことから逃げている現実とノートで行ったり来たり慰めて、ああなんて生きづらい世界なんだろう。だけど全部僕だから、うちうちしくしく僕だから、全部抱きしめて少し眠ろう。痛いの飛んでゆけ、悲しみに全てを奪われないように、僕は僕の味方でいようよ。まだまだ長い道の途中、ちょっと暗い休憩したで。
I'm sorry, I've got to pause there because I got to talk. Because otherwise this is going to be just me looking at the screen whilst the track plays, and I can't entirely have that, although I'm sure that for some of you, you just want me to keep the song going. Now, I love the guitars, the way they're strummed, the chord choices are pleasant, incredibly fragrant, very sweet and soft, and it's like being covered in a warm, fluffy blanket. And the vocal style from the singer as well. Soft, it's sensational, it's very soothing. There is some chest voice there, a bit of oomph in some of those chorus parts, especially when we get into the upper range with the harmonies on the left and other sides of the stereo field as well. But it's basically very comforting. It seems like a very intimate performance there. You can kind of see the person on the screen, how they're wrapped in that warm fuzzy coat, walking around the world with the stars around and everything like that. It's very soothing. Very soothing song. Great stuff so far. Great use of the strings as well. Nice additional higher layer.
僕は何がしたいんだろう。こんなにも惨めで情けなくても、僕はまだ自分を変えられそうにない。器用で八方美人、嫌われることを恐れている現実とノートで行ったり来たり励まして、
It's great to have the drums come in as well at this point. It's an interesting choice to have the drums kind of that halfway point, because you'd assume that for a lot of listeners you'd want all the elements at once to kind of keep you going and to kind of draw you in immediately. But when a track is well written, you don't necessarily need to have that. Sometimes it can be good to have gradual development, introduction upon introduction of vocal layers or of instrumental layers as you go along. And that's what we've got here. We've got the bass, the drums with the snare fill coming in. No sharp objects within the accompaniment or composition though. Things well balanced in the mix. Wonderful artwork, by the way. The animation is absolutely enthralling. Incredible visuals.
ここにいてもいいのかな頑張りすぎないように気づいた時でいい自分自身を優しく受け止めて
Fantastic minimalism with the symbols as well, actually.
全部全部僕だから十字しくしく僕だから全部全部抱きしめて少し眠ろう痛いの痛いの飛んでゆけ悲しみに全てを奪われないように僕は僕の味方でいようよたった一度の僕の人生愛するかどうかは僕次第だとしたら精一杯にああ言葉みずみずしく光るよだからだから
MyGO. Oh, that was such a beautiful song. I mean, I don't know what it's about, so I suppose we're going to be looking through the lyrics in a moment, but I just want to give a shout out to anyone who can understand this natively. Wudi, as well as other people. I mean, I think that it's fantastic that you have that experience. I probably will never have that experience unless I was to spend a lot of time learning Japanese, you know, to become sort of familiar with it. But it's never going to feel completely natural, you know. So I'm sort of envious of people who can understand this language natively to be able to get the whole story all in one. But I'm still nonetheless appreciative of the fact that I got to listen through it in the first place. And so we've got ourselves the lyrics here, the Google Doc. Thank you to Wudi for sending this through. The Shiori trail marker from the act named MyGO. The lyrics, what does it mean to be normal or ordinary? This ruler in my hand doesn't measure it very well at all. And the cycle of exhaled and inhaled anxiety, I stand motionless and surrender myself to it. I think I remember Woody mentioning that this was like their like an emo song for them. And I can completely relate to that. Back in the day, when I was a teenager, back in the mid-2000s, I was an emo. I listened to a lot of songs that had similar themes like this with the guitar focus and such. It was a lot less beautiful than this. This is a wonderful song. It's so pretty with the performance and everything like that. I like that we're going for the more sort of colorful aspect there, even with the, you know, the stuff that we're talking about within the track. You know, not necessarily being totally positive. I think that adds a sort of equilibrium to it tonally with those two factors coming together. Awkward, always failing or flailing, running back from things that might hurt me, going back and forth between reality and my notebook to comfort me. What a difficult world to live in, even so. Oh, the fears, the sorrows, they are me, so let's embrace them all in our arms and take a little nap. Oh, we still have a long road ahead, even if we take a little rest, no one's going to scold us. I think that's absolutely true. I think this is a beautiful message. It's like, even if you don't necessarily feel like you're enough, there's still no reason to beat the crap out of yourself because of that. You've just got to continue to try and find value in yourself and allow yourself and try to be kind to yourself at the same time, you know? If you can't figure out the root, there's no reason to be mad at yourself. Trying to read people's expressions swept along by life's necessities, is that what I truly want? I mean, it's really... I can relate to this, even though I feel so miserable and pathetic, I still can't seem to change myself. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that can relate to that, you know? Is it okay if I trust you? Is it okay if I stay here? The nice calm response with, of course. Try not to push yourself too hard. Whenever you feel that way, gently receive your self-compassion. I think that's wonderful. I think that's a wonderful sentiment there, you know? To allow yourself to be held by yourself and someone else, to allow yourself to still be loved even if you're not perfect. In this one and only lifetime of mine, it's up to me whether I choose to love. If I do, I'll give it my all. How the words glisten with a refreshing vibrance. That is why. Man, what a wonderful story. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track, Shiori Trail Marker from an act named MyGO. What do I think this track is about? Well, after reading through the lyrics, I think it's about someone who is trying to figure out their way through life. They don't feel as if they're necessarily succeeding at it, but they're also trying to communicate their understanding of the fact that it's okay not to know everything, and that part of life is simply knowing that you've got to take that journey as you go, one day at a time, right? It's about not getting swept up in those emotions, and it's about just trying to still find some way to love yourself and to take a nap and just to kind of recover what you can, because it's equally as important for you to have that patience for yourself as well as others who might be going through a similar journey, and to be kind. I think that's a beautiful story. It not only talks about the frustrations and the feelings that the singer has, whether they are talking with someone else or themselves, but also they're examining the fact that even if they feel that way or think that way, that life is still there to exist, and we still need to find a way to cope with that reality whilst being, I get it. It's really dope. It's a really beautiful track, and I love the story. I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to it. I think the vocal performance was tremendous. The whispered, breathy performance in the verse parts combined with the more intense, full-blown, not like over the top, but like we had a lot of power in those chorus sections, those chorus parts, a lot of conviction that I appreciate. I think they smashed it for sure. And that the contrast between the two was charming. It was really easy to follow what was going on there. There was dynamic range there naturally by virtue of the delivery, and all in all, it was very satisfying. We clearly cared about what we were singing about. We knew how to articulate ourselves in a way that made sense with the subject matter, and I think there was a lot of variety within the vocal performance there, melodically and otherwise, as well as the harmonies in the vocal section, which made it sound really interesting to listen to. It was fantastic. The vocals were done well, and the story was compelling. The track at 4 minutes 26, great use of real estate. I mean, it's outside the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot that I would typically encourage people to stay within, but I think this track had a lot going on with the different guitar, string, bass, and I think there might have been like a very simple drum kit. The drums weren't the focal point there. The percussion was less of a focal point within this, and I kind of dig that. A lot of the rhythm came from the way the guitars were strummed, but I think these verse chorus structures with the interlude there, some instrumental sections as well, there was just less rather than more. It was great. It was obviously more the focus was about the story, the progression that the person was going through, and I think that if you can continue to elaborate on the tale you're wanting to tell in a way that is going to keep people interested, is open, honest, and authentic, and as a topic that people will care about, I think that you can get away with it being vocal focused there. They're a sensational singer, so it's not like we were going to be bored anytime soon by their work. Part of that is that they changed the intensity and complexity of their vocal performance throughout the track, and they emoted and expressed themselves differently. But it was also the fact that the guitars with the jingly jangly open chords, the strings with the mid to high range resonance there, whole noting over the 8th and 16th that we had going on with the strummed chords on the sides, the bass line being nice and thick and full in that mid to low range and providing a nice counterbalance to a lot of the higher elements in there. And maybe there were some little synth parts or keys as well in there occasionally, like the stars in the sky. They glistened, man, they glimmered. The drums that I heard, there were occasional kicks and maybe some snares there, but they were very, very subtle. The cymbals as the accents on the top of the bars. There was a lot to appreciate and respect here. It was never overwhelming. There was a gradual increase in the amount going on as we went through, but it never felt like too much. It was very soft and gentle with, like, we stayed away from complex extensions within the harmonies. We didn't go with any sort of weird key changes or shifts in tempo. We didn't adjust the time signature. It wasn't progressive like that. I simply think it was a situation where we handled ourselves really eloquently, and it shone through within the mix in all regards. The track's motif overall was stunning. It allowed a lot of space for the vocalist to speak their truth through the lack of complexity with the harmonies within the chord progressions and bass lines. But I think it was also there was enough movement between those notes and the root notes, and to kind of keep you feeling like things were going to be okay. Like, it demonstrated there was a bit of sadness there, which is potentially an understatement, to kind of weigh the how heavy some of the vocal parts were, looking at how pathetic we are and everything like that. But it never got too dark. And I think that the tone of the instruments helped to kind of make us seem like things were going to be okay. It was a comforting, warm, soothing performance, as I've said time and time again. I'm trying not to repeat myself. It just felt good to listen to. It felt like an honest attempt at making the listener feel better about their own existence through the way that things were put together. There wasn't a note out of place. I thought things were very appropriate. I mean, finally, you know, it's just the studio recording, mixing and mastering, and that was tremendous. I mean, like, the vocals were so present and tight in the mix, and the side parts, you know, the backing vocals had their own space in the stereo field. The guitars double tracked like they were, nicely filtered without a whole lot of effects chain processing on them to keep them nice and reasonably raw, despite the single call tone to them was good. Or were they acoustic? They might have been acoustic steels, semi-acoustics. But the bass line was nice and thick and full there. Nice. Again, it was great, and that low end fit snug in there and added a bit of oomph to the track without being too much. The drums, the percussion was kind of sitting in the ether. It poked its head out a little bit, but never came out too much. So clearly it was simply there to provide an extra sub layer, which is so unusual, but so refreshing, ironically, because of that. When you do something differently with an element that a lot of people take for granted, they take notice, and I certainly didn't. I think it was well handled. I don't think having a dominant chord progression would necessarily help us in this situation. I think in addition to that, there were no resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum, so there was no issues with like how things were niched in that regard. Everything had a home, as well as in the stereo field with the different cymbal hits and stuff like that. Although we didn't have a whole lot of stuff going all around the place. It wasn't automation with the panning and stuff, I think, simply because it was compelling enough without needing to adjust things that much. There was dynamic range to the track. We didn't have everything all the time. There were little bits and higher bits, and especially with parts like the vocals, as I mentioned, there was varying intensities to how they were done, and that made it more interesting to listen to throughout the duration of the track, not only from a performance perspective, but also from a production perspective. Things weren't suffocated, but it was still, you know, nonetheless nice and loud without pumping, so limiting the bus compression was handled well. I mean, effectively, this is my review of this track. Shiori or trail markers from an act named MyGO, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you on the next SB Patrons video. Spiderhands out.